Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Always some fascinating stories come from this guy who is a noted architect in the New York City metro area. He's also a guy who knows everything about tennis, so much, in fact, that he was a tennis pro way back in the day. We stumbled upon that a number of podcasts ago and been talking about some of the amazing things that happened early in his career, his tennis career, which then pivoted over to the architecture side. He's Mr. John Riggio, and he's back with us. Hi, John. How you doing?
Good. Hi, Steve. How are you?
I'm well. Yeah, last time we left off right around the records that you had, your tennis records back when you were in your 20s. Tell us about some of the comeback record. That was huge.
Yes, the next record that I recall was, this is the number 6 ATP record, and I was able to obtain the record in the most comeback wins also. And this is when my opponent was able to win the first match of a set. I wouldn't just lose the set. I was very difficult to beat, and I was able to come back and win the remaining matches to win the whole match. I would win the remaining sets, and this turned into be another ATP record. And this is my coach had kept the account on these type of records and told me about it. And this is another record. So not only I was able to win the other record I discussed, the number 5 record of when I get ahead 2 points, I don't lose the match. And then this is when I would lose, say, the first match, I would still have the ability to come back and win the whole match anyway, winning the remaining sets. So that is my next record that I was able to achieve. And I was told this, usually I was told these records at the end of the season, after the season is over. And I wasn't really aware that this was even happening when I was playing tennis. I was just concentrating on my tennis game. But then I was able to achieve these different records.
Amazing. And when did the comeback record, when did that take place? You were what about age?
I was over 18, and it was about 1986. In fact, I probably have more records than just 10 records. I have one administrative record, so that would make it like 11. Then I have the penalty with the Japanese team is another world record. And I think I obtained some other records too when I was playing with the Japan team. But the records of playing like the most games in a short time is certainly a record. It was such a record that it was really considered an abuse. It was really that was a problem. And I think one lesson about playing pro tennis is they do have a set number of days and hours of playing pro tennis. Now, a lot of this type of pro tennis has to do with also being a young player, be in great shape playing. But the official number of days and hours you play are usually 3 days a week and a maximum of 5 hours of tennis playing. And that is when you are playing official tennis. Now, you can play after hours or on the side on your own, but that is sort of the pace of the number of matches and number of hours you're supposed to play. They don't want the players to get worn out or play too many hours. Many times I would play past those number of days and hours. When I was on court 33, I was always playing a certain number of days, and I would stay there more than 5 hours. And so I remember one player from Italy, Miss Raffaella Reggi. She was always seeing me play like more than the number of hours. She was always pointing that out to me that I was on the court so many hours, and she was able to see that. And so that is one player I made friends with. She was a friend of mine, and I used to talk to her. I think since she was from Italy, I helped her out play at some of the local courts that were safe to play at. I recommended some courts locations just to play for fun after hours and things like that. And but that is sort of what was going on with the number of hours of playing and things like that.
Would there be times, and I get it, you had such a passion for tennis, still do. Were there times where you were playing and didn't even realize how much time went by? You're just doing your thing. You're playing, having a great time. It's like, oh my gosh, I've been playing for 7 hours. Did that happen?
Yes, I think since I was young and able to play a lot of tennis, I was in great shape. I told you I had a physical examination with my sport doctor. I was the number one in his career of
Hmm.
playing in shape. And so even at the national tournament, instead of just playing one match on Saturday, I used to play two. So I would come home and I would tell my mother, I won two matches today. So I was able to really play more matches. And that went all the way to a maximum of playing like 7 matches when I played the Pacific and the Japanese team. In particular, I played like 7 matches in a day. I could win 7 matches in a day. Was really so it slowly increased from maybe playing one match in a day to I ended up playing so many extra matches. I could play maybe 7 matches in a day. And that would take like a
Wow.
whole afternoon, starting at 7:30 in the morning. And then I would leave when it's starting to get dark. It might be like 7:30 at night. So I was
Mm.
playing like a whole afternoon.
You've mentioned before about acting class or actors playing tennis and how the whole acting thing is very beneficial to the game. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so when I was playing with the top pro players, a lot of the pro players, they weren't really necessarily big entertainers, but what they were doing was a lot of them were either training themselves with some acting classes, or they really had like a hobby or a side job doing things like acting, live stage acting. They might even meet in like movies or things like that. So they were involved with acting. And from talking to different people, they were saying that could help because tennis, as you start to play and you're on television, it's a little more to entertaining. You have an entertainment contract, and so that gives you some help taking acting. And they were suggesting some things like that of acting class, and but some of them were more involved with taking acting as a hobby too. They did it as a side thing that they'd like to get involved with, and that is another thing that was happening with some tennis players.
Hmm. Did you ever take any acting lessons, any classes?
No, I didn't really bother with too much acting.
Hmm.
I just concentrated on my tennis playing, and I didn't really get into acting as a hobby or anything.
Gotcha. Let's talk about the sponsors. The sponsors pretty much took care of everything when you were playing, right? You didn't even have to, there was no payment, entry fee, or anything for a match or a tournament. They took care of all of it.
Yes, I think one thing about my tennis career that is really important to know is that my tennis career it wasn't really self-guided by myself. A lot of tennis players, they're told once they get going, they can go find a tournament, pay maybe $1,500 entrance fee, and then they could win the tournament.
Hmm.
But I think there's some serious problems with that. One of them is that those tournaments aren't based on the ATP tour, which is the major leagues of tennis. And so to play those is really just like in the wind. And personally, I don't think it has that much weight playing those kind of tournaments. There's no big money or anything involved, no big television, no ESPN or anything, world television. But a lot of people do. They even put those tournaments on their player card. Some
Hmm.
players, so if you read a player's card, some of the tournaments they really just went, paid the fee, and they won the tournament themselves, and then they put it on their card. But that is like a different style of playing. I wasn't playing like that. When my playing was going, I had sponsors that were running all my matches, running the ATP, keeping me in the ATP tour, playing a lot of matches with other players, moving up in rank, and that is how I always played. So I never played where I went and paid a entrance fee of say $1,500 and then gave it a try to win. I really would never played like that. And I think looking back at it, it wasn't wrong because I could see all kinds of problems could start to happen that you're playing without permission, things like that. If you are playing on your own and somehow if you do not have a active contract with the ATP, you can get fined $300,000. That
Wow.
is They have all kinds of things like that. So playing in there, they're taking all your chances. So when I was playing, they were playing very strict. And I think I had said before that if for instance my my tennis ATP ranking needed to go to court, that it had to stop for a minute, I'd have to hand in all my sponsors advertising and just walk away from the court and not play at all. And it was very serious because this is a very serious pro sport business. If I was to play after the point that the ATP said I cannot play without getting further approval, they can get fined. My sponsors get fined. The fine can come out to $300,000 or more. It's very serious business.
Can
So
you just, we've talked ATP and some of the other tennis leagues. Can you give us the bigger ones that either you played in or just in the world of tennis? So what are the other ones? We have the ATP and the differences between them. What's another tennis league that's big?
well, the ATP is the biggest league. That is the
Okay.
major leagues. The minor leagues is the ITF.
Okay. Yep. You
And
mentioned that before.
so when I was young, I played right past the ITF. My playing was good enough. I didn't have to play any ITF. I went right past the ITF and played the ATP. I think over the years, knowing players, some ATP players do play the ITF on their own anyway. They're able to do it. They know about all the different tournaments they have in ITF, and some of them do play. So that's like playing majors and minors at the same time. Some people do that, but I never did. I only played the top league. The other leagues other than ATP and ITF are really the USTA, which is like a club league.
Mm.
It's everyday club league. Anyone could join, and they usually you can find your level and play tournaments. You can start off at level one and play tournaments at level one. So that is really the only leagues they have. They also
But
have independent tennis. Any club or a group of tennis players they could put together a tournament anywhere. It doesn't even have to be part of any of the leagues. They could have their own club tournament, and they could play a tournament. They could get any kind of people to play and have a prize of playing and things like that. Of course, it isn't considered pro tennis, so there isn't any official money generated, and that's all it is. So that would be considered like club level tennis.
when we look at Wimbledon, let's say Wimbledon, what is that connected to? Is that ATP or that's completely different?
It is ATP tennis, yes.
Okay, gotcha. Wow.
In fact, the London Queens I was talking about is really a higher level match, more like American Airlines match, or
hmm.
Roland Garros or Manhattan Open, things like that.
What about like the US Open? Same ATP?
It is the ATP, yes.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, just get a better understanding of I thought there were more larger leagues, but ATP is really the top.
Yes, ATP is the top league, and then I think like from my description of each tournament, I think you get an idea of the different kinds of tournaments. Some tournaments are really the highest level playing, they're generating a lot of money, and some tournaments, even though they might not be the the main line of tennis playing, a lot of them do get attention. There are different tournaments that do get a lot of attention
Mm.
and things like that. But a lot of my tennis playing was based off my sponsors. If they told me to play anywhere, I can just go there and play. I did play on different locations outside of my own tennis center for a while. I think I discussed that,
Mm.
and so I can go and play anywhere, and if they told me to play at a certain location, I can go and play there. It doesn't bother me at all. So that's really one part of my career was just based on playing the tournaments that they had available for me, and the tournaments were really the highest level. They were really generating the most money. It was very serious pro tennis.
When you look back at those years when you were 18, 19, in your low 20s, if you could, and I always say everything's a learning experience. It's part of life. You should never look back and say, I should have this, I should have that. But if you could have changed something within your tennis career early there, what would you have done? if you look back, it's like, I probably should have maybe went in that direction or in that direction. Anything stand out in your mind?
Um, no, I don't think there's too many things I could really have adjusted in my tennis career.
Hmm.
Uh, there's I think there's all kinds of different things. I think I had the big advantage of holding my own court, but I think a lot of times it always came to maybe playing in other locations, moving to other locations. Some people take the chances, they move to another country for a little while and see if that helps the career out and things like that. And so that there's things like that.
Hmm. Would have been any matches that you look back and say, yeah, I should have played in that one?
But I think one thing about my career, I think a lot of it also was growing and learning and moving up to such a high level. My contract level went all the way up to $100 million. But I think a lot of times, I think with those different things, was able to put together all the different people to get the most out of the tennis playing, like things like promoters, and agents, things like that, to play the tennis. And I think having everyone together to move forward like that would work better. It was taking me some time to get all the different people to really help with my career and really move up in tennis. And then we were doing all kinds of things. I think like even like the TV station starting off with Channel 2 Sports,
Hmm.
and then eventually moving up to international television, ESPN television, things like that. So that is some of the things that we I was moving up through. For a while, there was some promoters that were involved in my tennis. At Sutton Each, there was a promoter that they did have working on my tennis for a while. And I think one interesting thing about the promoter was they got into this game of putting words into like sport advertisements, sport newspapers, things like that, and they were communicating back and forth with other sport
Hmm.
players. But in fact, I wasn't the one really directly doing this. That was happening through a promoter. So that is one interesting thing that was also taking place.
Why don't we talk about, because I don't think we really went down this road. Um, Injuries. How about injuries over the years while you were playing tennis? Did you have any serious injuries, any reoccurring, any issues along the way?
Well, I think when I was younger, I started off getting the basic injuries like twisting my ankles, tennis elbow, hitting the racket onto my knee, all kinds of things like that. And with those injuries, I was able to heal from all those injuries. They turned out to be like learning in this injuries. Whenever I made those injuries, I went to my doctor. I was able to get the information of what the injury was, what they were all about. So,
Hmm.
say if I twisted my ankles, the answer was to put ace bandages on my ankles and really learn not to hurt my ankles anymore. And that is really was the best way to solve my problems. Was also if I was to get an injury, was to rest my injury and let it heal naturally was really the best way to do it. And so I learned from all those different things. And like all the even like the small things, like if you start to get a muscle pull in your legs, you're feeling it. Usually, if you just drank some water, was the easiest
Hmm.
cure for that problem. And then I wouldn't get a muscle pull. So there was all those little things, really knowing your body that you're not going to get injuries, and that helped me. And I was becoming like injury free. I In the end, I did not have any real injuries playing all those games, even with Japan and the Pacific. I did not really have any new injuries. I was
Hmm.
able to keep where I did not have any more problems like that.
Was there any point where you were sidelined for a period of time due to like a major injury, or is just those little nagging ones occasionally popping up?
Yeah, every once in a while, if I had an injury, the idea was not to ruin my tennis game and things like that. But I wasn't really delayed uh, in my tennis career from any injuries.
Hmm.
Some players did have much worse injuries and could stop their career, but my injuries weren't that bad. I was able to recover from them, And I also was able to adjust my game so I wouldn't get the same injury over again. Like, especially like things like hitting the racket on my kneecap was really a problem. That was I was able to uh, figure out how not to hurt my kneecap anymore, and from there it was much improved. That was becoming a problem.
I know you had a number of sponsors over the years. Who was your best sponsor?
I think I was playing the best sponsor was really let's see well, I don't want to say because each sponsor was really at a different level.
Okay.
Somewhere I'm just starting off, just as like a preteen playing tennis, and like a lot of things I couldn't just rush in to just start to play tennis everywhere and win the big tournaments. It took a while to really build up. Um, I think at one point, we're starting off the first initial sponsor, I think, with Patrick Mulrooney and the pro shop was obviously really the biggest and best opportunity because that was really gave me a whole future of playing pro tennis. If I did not get picked up by that pro shop, I don't know if I was ever going to make it into pro tennis because that
Wow.
set the stage for me to really get into pro tennis. And then the next one with the pro shop was really picking up the two next sponsors were really Prince Racket and then Anthony Cambria, which I was able to sign on with the U.S. Tennis Center. So that is really set the stage. Now, I think otherwise my other sponsors did very good. I think my other sponsors did very good. I think in then it ended up with the Japan team. We had those problems I discussed, and but otherwise things were going very good. I think the playing was very solid. There was all those problems. And I think with Japan, what happened was I was talking to them that they needed to get someone higher in their organization to make the matches. And they eventually sort of got a little frustrated and they just gave me the phone number to their corporate offices, the
Hmm.
Mitsubishi offices, and I called them myself. So I gave them my one-time call to see if I can stimulate something there. And I think I talked to their office and gave them my request to have someone higher in the organization run this whole thing. And I told them because I called around to the coaches here in the US and they're telling me the same thing that their organization was not really high enough. I think I described before that a lot of tennis playing is really watched by royals in Europe, and so that's really this the whole thing with the tennis is really going high up in the hierarchy. And so when it came to tennis, I told the Mitsubishi Corporation I requested that they can get some people to run the matches that the coaches were not successful in getting the
Yeah.
ATP matches going. That's I just very simply asked them that so they could also maybe figure out some other ideas of how to get the matches going. But in fact, their corporation really didn't take to that idea. I think that's the one key compared to all the other sponsors I had that when I gave them input about what's going on with tennis and how to get the ATP tennis tournaments going, they all listened to me and were very successful. But the Mitsubishi, when I called them, they really didn't take to that idea. They had their own set ideas. And I think when I called the sponsors, they usually had an office of at least three tennis administrators there.
Wow.
When I talked to them, I would talk to them. Maybe it was like on a conference call over there because I could hear them talking. And so, but they weren't really understanding what was happening there.
I got to tell you, John, I love the background of this and the stories. It's almost like watching a production on stage, and we're moving the curtain to see what's going on behind the stage. So like all the insight is fantastic. We're just about out of time. I want everybody to know that they can find you at John Riggio. That's John Riggio.com, the website for architecture, and just an amazing tennis career and lots more stories to uncover. John, I appreciate it. Thanks for being here today.
You're welcome, Lisa.
We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.